decided a few months ago we couldn't afford a holiday, and in the same conversation said, actually, but I really want a holiday. Okay, fuck it.
So you're not going next year?
No.
That's good. You have one son, right?
He's in his GCSE. He'll have finished his GCSEs by next summer, so we won't be doing an Easter holiday. So that's what we'll do.
So it's really good for kids to go to travel.
He experienced his first sneaker train. He learned how to haggle with fake watch sellers.
Yeah. Did you get a fake watch there?
Oh, he got a few. Yeah. Came back with various Amigas and.
Yeah. Rolexes. Did you get one?
I did. I got a Moonswatch.
Oh no. Faux one.
Yeah.
Faux.
They're 220 quid, and they sell out at 20 quid.
Yeah. Are you doing pre-capture? Yes.
30 frames.
Are you?
Yeah. You get too many if you shoot faster. And only a third of a second after shoot.
Okay. Yeah. So got a pre-capture. Third of a second. Oh, post-release burst. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, as in.
Once you've let go, it carries on for a third of a second after.
Oh, yes, no, I did. Yesterday.
Yeah.
That was. I got that one to 600.
Uh-huh.
That was blurry.
Yeah. Heat haze.
Number one, and number two. And I was using this.
Yeah.
I realised later when I got home, everything was on.
Right. Yeah.
So we're focusing,
Constantly.
people shut it, and then it just jumps.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure it out.
Don't use regular VR, always use sport if you're going to use it. Because it does, for some reason, the regular one jumps when you press focus.
Yeah.
So put it onto sport instead.
So, do you leave, it's worth having a conversation with you. Do you leave your sport more on
Yes.
as default?
Yes. Obviously, if you've got it on the tripod and stuff, then turn them both off. Because
I turn it off when it's on.
Yes. Off. I know it's fine on sport if you've got a monopod, because
I'm actually.
Yeah. It allows for, I think it's horizontal movement, but not up and down movement when you're on sport mode. So.
Okay. I'll try it off. Anything you're doing with pre-capture yesterday. I was thinking, I've got
Yeah. So the heat haze as well is infamously bad.
Yeah, it was coming off the mouth.
It's always off the people, that's the problem. You think it's not too bad, and then thousands of people go in front of you and all breathe out.
Yeah, and then you're quietly thinking, and then you look around,
yeah,
a lot of people. But then I saw some non-Nikon cameras, they're pretty good.
All it's down to with heat haze is just shooting through it, a maximum burst, and just shoot through it, and you'll get 95% soft, but you will get some sharp ones in there.
I don't really want to do them walking with a massive public thing going, standing behind people like this. Doing this.
Yeah. That adds to focus problems as well.
Yes, I was blowing. Let's put my mask on. It was so bad. It was getting everything. You've got it now.
No, yeah, I've got it in my throat at the moment.
Yeah.
Right, we're on.
It was just one of these things where I don't want to go.
So yeah, you can hear behind you those traditional gun salutes ringing out at Hyde Park. Just to give you some detail about why so many are fired. Apparently a standard gun salute comprises of 21 gun salutes being fired, and then there's an extra 20 added on because those ones are being fired in a royal park. So yeah, it's a reminder that while for the royal family they have said that they are really fully focused this week on those important VE Day events and tributes. Of course, today is another day where they have to mark another significant anniversary. Unbelievable, really, to think that it was 2 years ago that we were all outside Buckingham Palace, outside Westminster Abbey, as the King and Queen were crowned in front of the country and, of course, an audience right around the world as well. So those gun salutes marking that. Also, a couple of special new portraits have been unveiled of the King and Queen. Hopefully we can bring you those pictures later on today. They've been unveiled at the National Gallery, and then those portraits will be hung inside Buckingham Palace in the throne room. So if you are lucky enough to have tickets booked to go to Buckingham Palace in the summer, you'll be able to see those portraits. And of course, that follows a very age-old tradition for monarchs over the years. Of course, though, for the royal family, this week it's all about VE Day, and later on today Queen Camilla will be here where I am at the Tower of London. I think what's really important is basically that I step out of the way so that you can see the tribute that the Tower of London have decided to lay on to mark this significant 80th anniversary. If anyone was lucky enough to come here back in 2014, you'll probably remember seeing these, the spectacular poppies that made up this amazing installation back then. 800,000 poppies were laid on then to mark the centenary of the First World War. However, this time just 30,000 are back here at the Tower of London to pay a special mark of respect for the sacrifices that were made during the Second World War. What Phil, my cameraman, is currently zooming in on is what they've described as the crater of this exhibition, because basically the Tower of London, like so many buildings across London, was actually hit by a bomb during the Blitz, and what they're wanting to do is really show that yes, of course, it's important that we reflect on the impact that the Second World War had on the military, but also the risks and the threats that people across London faced on a day-to-day basis. This amazing installation is going to be on display from now right until November, which I think is a really nice touch. So it'll be on display until Remembrance Sunday. Talking to the governor earlier on, he said what's really important for them is that things like this help to bring it to life for a younger audience. We saw plenty of that yesterday as well, didn't we? Where unexpectedly we saw Prince George joining the Prince and Princess of Wales at that tea party for veterans. So I think the whole week, really, as we sadly increasingly see the numbers of veterans with us dwindling as they're in their 90s and in their early hundreds, really making sure that school children, young people can learn from those stories so that they're never forgotten.
Rhiannon, you mentioned those portraits of the King and the Queen. We can bring those to our viewers now. Just tell us more about these. Oh, excellent.
Yeah, so these are two portraits which were specifically commissioned by the King and Queen. They actually, I'm trying to bring up the details on them. They were specifically, they decided to choose two different artists to paint them. So for the King, he decided to choose Peter Kufeld, and for Queen Camilla, she chose Paul S. Benny. Lovely pictures of them unveiling both of their portraits, basically both of them looking absolutely delighted. But we've also been sent some details from the palace, who have some quotes from, first of all, Peter Kufeld, who talks about kind of being able to mark this historic moment with the King, talking about how actually the first paintings that he was asked, commissioned by the King, well, then Prince of Wales, to paint were actually of Prince William and Prince Harry. So they've known each other for a very long time. He says, the King gave me 5 sittings in total, and then jokingly says, not including the painting of the imperial state crown, because the state crown had its own sittings. But also then goes on to say that actually his granddaughter was rather surprised at one point when she burst through the door at his home and said, oh, it's the Queen, because that's where he was painting that portrait. As for Paul S. Benny, who painted Queen Camilla, lucky him, he apparently actually had a studio that was set up inside Clarence House. So he says, I shall miss the quiet quiet and relaxed atmosphere while I was working there, even when their majesties were engaged elsewhere. But yeah, as I said, it's a really important tradition that those portraits are painted to mark that coronation moment. Those paintings at the moment at the National Gallery, that's where they've been unveiled, but they will soon then be moved to Buckingham Palace, where they'll be placed in the throne room.
Rhiannon, appreciate it. Thank you so much. Going to bring you plenty more on.
Is she being okay? No, she's feels like she's back to sleeping. 4 minutes. She's working. Oh, is it? Oh. What is it now? 8, 9. And she said it went really well. It destroyed me. Stop doing this to yourself. I agree with that. No, I think we're okay. We're paused on things. So Nat has to look after these VIPs together. And this evening she's at the service. The service so she's in beautiful waitress. It's cold today, so I could put a coat on to cover it.
I'm glad you've asked, because I've just found out, so I'm going to sound very clever now. So the 41 gun salute was because it is standard to have a 21 gun salute for a royal occasion, for a tradition, but also when it's a royal park, you add another 20. Here, though, just near the Tower of London, you have 21 as a standard gun salute, you have 20 because this is a royal, 21 because this is a royal palace, and then you have 20 representing the City of London. So I think I've got all the maths right. So that's why we still have the gun salutes ringing out very close to where we are now. Of course, it's really remarkable, isn't it? We've got this military kind of pageantry going on today. Yesterday we had this huge military procession down the Mall in front of Buckingham Palace marking VE Day. Today the gun salutes, of course, are to mark the second anniversary of the coronation. Hard to believe, really, isn't it, that it was 2 years ago that we were either outside Buckingham Palace or outside Westminster Abbey witnessing the moment that the King and Queen were crowned. They are actually another side of London, the National Gallery, where they've unveiled another important tradition when it comes to coronations. They've unveiled their own coronation portraits. Now, what is interesting about those pictures is that the King and Queen actually decided to choose separate artists to do the different portraits. So the King chose Peter Kufeld, the Queen instead choosing Paul S. Benny. The Palace giving us some nice quotes from both the artists. Peter Kufeld, who painted the King, saying that actually the first time that he was commissioned by then Prince of Wales was to paint Prince William and Prince Harry. So he's worked with him for a number of years, but he was talking about how the King gave me 5 sittings in total, not including painting the Imperial State Crown, because apparently the State Crown had its very own sitting. But he also talked about how his granddaughter had been taken a little bit by surprise because he was painting that portrait at home. His granddaughter burst in and said, "Oh, it's the King." However, on the other hand, Paul S. Benny, who painted the Queen, he was a lucky man. Apparently, for nearly a year, he had a temporary studio at Clarence House, and he says, "I shall miss the quiet and relaxed atmosphere while I was working there, even when their majesties were engaged elsewhere." So those portraits just unveiled at the National Gallery. But if you're lucky enough to have tickets to go inside Buckingham Palace in the summer, well, you're going to get to see those portraits because they're going to be moved to the throne room at Buckingham Palace, which is going to be their permanent home.
Ah, how interesting that you're bringing in children into this, Rhiannon. Of course, we are marking VE Day, and amongst all the pomp and ceremony yesterday and the fly past, the one thing that stuck in many people's minds is little Prince Louis poking fun at his big brother, flicking his hair. What else is planned for VE Day for the next 3 days, and where are you?
Do you know what? I think that is what stands out, and something that the royal family are trying to make sure that they are at the heart of is sadly the living history from the Second World War is dying out. Most of the veterans who we're very lucky to still have with us are in their 90s and their early hundreds and probably won't be with us for much longer. So making sure that people are passing on their stories is really important. Yesterday, for example, we didn't expect Prince George to appear at the tea party alongside William and Kate, but it seems like he really wanted to come along. There's a lovely photo of him holding hands with a veteran. It feels like his first official engagement, if you like, and a very poignant one as well. But in terms of bringing stories to life, well, that's what they're trying to do here at the Tower of London. So I'm going to get Phil, my cameraman, to kind of give you a bit of a show and tell of what we got here. You might remember these poppies from back in 2014 when they were positioned right throughout the moat around the Tower of London and produced the most amazing spectacle to mark the centenary of the First World War. Well, some of them are back. There were 800,000 at the time. This time they've borrowed 30,000 from the Imperial War Museum to again pay a very moving tribute to the sacrifice that was made during the Second World War. So I'm told that cascade of poppies from the White Tower signifies the sense of suffering, the outpouring of suffering and grief right from the heart of that symbolic place for the Tower of London. Then as you move down onto the ground, you can see more poppies rippling across the ground, representing in a way that the streams of blood and the loss that we saw during the Second World War. I think it's important that they're pointing out that it wasn't just those in the military that were affected, but also people across London, across towns and cities. And then you can see in the middle that amazing display, which isn't a crown on a day like today when we're talking about a coronation. It's meant to be kind of the sign of an explosion and a crater, because actually the Tower of London, yes, known for things like the crown jewels, but in fact was actually also hit by a bomb during the Blitz. What's really nice, though, I think, about this installation is that they're opening it up today. Queen Camilla is going to be here later with some school children, so of course reinforcing that message of passing on stories. But actually you're going to be able to see this installation, this display, right up until Remembrance Sunday in November. So another very poignant time when the country comes together to remember the sacrifices that were made all those years ago.
Rhiannon, thanks very much. That looks absolutely fantastic, that display, doesn't it? Thank you very much. Now, an investigation is underway after two superbike riders died in a crash during a championship race. 21-year-old Owen Jenner and 29-year-old Shane Richardson died in an 11-bike crash on the opening lap of the race in Cheshire. Matthew Thompson has been following the story. And Matthew, there's clearly an element of risk in superbike racing, but this is just an awful outcome, something that happened in front of spectators and, of course, on camera.
Yes, indeed. I mean, look, anyone who participates in superbike riding knows that it's probably amongst the most dangerous of motorsports, but that doesn't mean that yesterday's events were any more tragic or shocking for the people who, as you say, were unfortunate enough to be present to see it. It happened, as you say, at the very first very first lap of the first race, and there was an 11-car or 11-bike pile-up, really. It was described by organisers as being a chain reaction incident, they described it. You can imagine what that is in practice, is one or two bikes perhaps at the front collide or slip, and that just cascades through the rest of the race. 11 riders in total were involved. Two of them, Owen Jenner, a 21-year-old Englishman, and Shane Richardson, who was 29, from New Zealand, both lost their lives. Owen there on the left of your screen and Shane on the right. One other man, a 47-year-old Tom Tunstall, a rider, was taken to hospital with serious injuries, and we're awaiting an update on his condition. 5 other riders were treated from...
Party! Halt! Party left. Turn! 5.